Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget that if you are one of our Patreon supporters, then on the private Patreon feed for you guys, we have just dropped this week a 45-minute chat that Wem and I had. We got a question in from Sarah Jane and from Banjo asking us about what we would give in terms of advice and experience in terms of buying a site, but not necessarily just buying a site, what we would do if we were in the process of finding a site to rent again or looking at the buying process. So if you want to hear that one, you can head to patreon.com/Children of the Forest. And if not, on with the chat with Leah.
I'm Wem.
And I'm Lewis.
This is the Forest School Podcast.
Let's go! We go. Good evening. Sounds very formal when I say good evening.
Good evening,
everybody. We're here. So with Leah, or I was going to attempt your last name, and then I always backtrack on people's last names.
I'm going to attempt it. Leenderts.
Yeah, well, yeah, it'll do.
How would you say it?
Well, I do say Leenderts, but it's fine. A double E in Dutch is A. Yeah, as it goes, but that's a tricky one. That's a trick question.
I was right to be hesitant. I feel validated now.
You were.
We're in.
Well done.
Leah, you are here to chat about, your work with the Almanacs. I was just saying to Wem, I went and ran and grabbed, and I have 22, 23, and 24 in front of me.
Oh, fantastic.
And I've got 2019. Does that make me a bigger fangirl because I've got an earlier version?
I don't know.
You know, do I get more points for that?
Yeah. That's the second one I ever made.
Yeah.
Was 2019, I think. I'm quickly checking my books now. Yeah, I think so. 2019 was my second ever one.
But I think Lewis and I stumbled across them completely independently because I think perhaps my sister gave me this one year for Christmas. And then, Lewis, you turned up one day and was like, oh, I've got this book. It's so good. And I was like, yeah, me too. I remember you excitedly flicking through going, it's got recipes for biscuits every month. So I think it was the first one. It was just like, yes, that is the thing. So for anybody...
Don't mind a few biscuits.
Oh, yeah. For anybody who hasn't seen one of your almanacs, would you like to say a little bit in your own words about sort of what they are in a nutshell? Because some people haven't even ever heard that word, it seems. I sort of thought it was something maybe only to do with like tide times that maybe people used to use in the olden days. When I first heard that word, that's kind of what I associated with it. But yeah, do you want to say a bit about what your almanacs contain?
Well, yeah, you're right. An almanac can be just that. It can be anything really that's about the year or about a year. So actually there's a few that are sort of have a similar idea to mine in that they run through the year. But there's also things like Whitaker's Almanac, which is all about the cricketing year. I'm being testing myself here. The past cricketing year, so what's happened in the sporting almanacs, and so again, which will tell you who won what and all of that. So they're either about the year ahead or they're about the past year. Mm-hmm. But yes, mine kind of came about from looking at old almanacs, because it's a very, very old form of publishing. It's been around forever. There's almanacs from, the Nile, ancient Egypt, and all of that about when the Nile floods and all of this sort of thing. It's a really, really old form of publishing. My publisher puts on the cover of mine the original and best-selling almanac, which is slightly cheeky. Not quite
of
true,
all
but
time.
We could revive it.
Yeah.
Revived it between us. So my idea really was to kind of look back at these kind of old rural agricultural almanacs, really, and see what can be taken from them and brought into, things that I'm interested in and that I wanted to know about. And so it's really a kind of guide to the year, really, well, I suppose, in terms of the things I want to know about it. It's the sky at night, it's the tide times, because I really love, when I go on a holiday, I don't live by the sea, but when I go on a holiday, I get those little yellow tide timetables, and I feel like there's a kind of poetry in those figures stuff. I really always love that. I just love having that information, even though I'm in Bristol and not knowing where, not by the beach or whatever. I love to know that stuff. And the sky at night, what planets we can see, moon phases, gardening by the moon, everything that I can think of, really, that is a kind of key into appreciating the seasons a little bit more, was the way I'm coming from it. So I'm not coming from it necessarily as a farmer, though there's a little bit of kind of farming-y stuff in there, particularly for 2024 with the theme is the garden. But really, my idea was, this is a really lovely form for kind of celebrating each month and looking at each month and finding all the different ways that I can of creating little keys into enjoying the month. So a bit more practically, it's a little book. It's small, hardback. You can stick it in your pocket, carry it around. Black and white black and white drawings inside, lovely, colourful cover, and it runs through the 12 months of the year. So you literally read January in January, and November in November, and all of that. How's that?
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. And what we really like about them is that you mentioned the theme this year is the garden for 2024. And you do sort of have a theme for each year and a sort of particular focus or some kind of like inspiration from different places, which I really enjoy. So one of them I seem to remember had recipes from the Romany community. I seem to remember that was really, really interesting. And this year also, as well as the garden, you've got a bit of a collaboration with with somebody else who's giving some ideas for sort of meditations and marking the year in that kind of way. So each of those gives each one a different flavour, doesn't it? So that actually, as well as the things that are, the kind of the night sky or the tide times that are just part of the year and always will be, there's also a kind of influence which kind of just gives it its own unique flavour, which I really like.
Yeah. I've sort of tried to make every year about 50-50, kind of 50% is the tables and all of those things that you've had before and that you expect and that you want to see. So when is the sun rising? When's the sun setting? What are the moon phases? All of that stuff. And then about 50% is kind of new or slightly different. And giving it a theme is just sort of partly, it kind of happened naturally. The first one I did was sort of almost by accident. I thought it would be lovely to kind of concentrate on the moon a little bit. There were lots of moon names for each month, and I thought that's a really nice way of kind of clicking into the month, naming the harvest moon and the hunter's moon and the moon before Yule and all of these things. They have stories behind them, it was just a lovely way. And then, and I hadn't at that point really thought, it always has a theme. And then my publisher said, okay, so what's next year's theme? And I went, oh, is that what we do? And she said, yes, that's
right.
what we do. So that's what we do. Yeah. But it really helps actually to keep it fresh and keep it a bit different every year, and to make me kind of stretch myself a little bit. And like you say, bring in other people, bring in other voices and other ways of appreciating the year and kind of looking at the year.
Yeah, we were just saying today we were chatting with one of our volunteers. She hadn't seen the Almanacs before, and we were going, oh, look, we've got this one, and we're talking to them about it. And we were saying how like I particularly get quite overwhelmed if you get like a huge book of way too many things. It goes like, this is all the things you could do in spring, for example, and it's just so much you never get round to doing half of it. But having the themes every year means that it's like, for me at least, it's been sort of achievable to go like, I've only got to do a soup. I've got 30 days to do a soup, and then next year you get round and you can add to it. But it means that when we're doing like planning for our sessions, if it comes up, we're not just looking at this year's, we're also, the library is sort of building very slowly. Lovely. And that's much more achievable, I think, than these big volumes of like, oh, I've just punched my mic stand.
Yeah, that's so nice, because one of the things that I kind of wanted to do right from the start really was not make it so that only really able-bodied, energetic people could get a lot out of it, you know, so that it's not just for people who can go out on big hikes or who can do this stuff. So there's always a different kind of way in, and those can be really small, like you say, make a soup, make a biscuit. You know, if you're stuck in the house and you're ill or whatever, there's some way that you can appreciate the seasons. You can look out of your window and you can see Mars going past, you know, all of these sorts of little ways that actually are very small. I really like the idea of making it really tiny and really, really accessible to people in cities as well as a countryside. I live in a city, you know, I know it can be hard to access nature. So it's lovely that's worked for you as well, you know, even in that setting where you're actively looking for things to do.
Yeah. And so you're in a city now, and obviously lots of these books are, I would say, almost by stealth, encouraging that kind of nature connection idea. What's your journey to sort of nature connection been like? Was it something that's always been with you, or?
Well, I live in Bristol, and I'm from Bristol, so you know I've always been here. It's a fairly greenish city, so that we're not too starved of countryside here. But I studied horticulture. Actually, I was interested in gardening, and then studied horticulture, and then moved from that. Actually, went straight into journalism. And wrote about gardening. So I've been a gardening writer for a long time. So I have had that connection via the garden for a long time. And I actually kind of think that gardeners, you know, some people really, really need this book. Some people are very kind of divorced from the seasons and from the way that the months change, you know, month after month. But gardeners aren't, because you just simply can't garden without understanding that, you know, well, you can't stick your geraniums out at this time of year because in a couple of days' time there's going to be a frost, and you know, and all of that stuff. You have to sow your seeds then, and so I think gardeners develop actually quite a detailed understanding of the seasons that most of us don't have. So in a way, it's almost not for gardeners, because you know they've got that stuff, but they enjoy it anyway. So yes, I've had a garden, and I've been a gardener. So I kind of came at it from that point of view. But also, I think because my main work is writing, I'm as guilty as anyone else of getting stuck behind a computer. I'm in a little terrace house in Bristol. You know, I can lose touch with the seasons just as much as anyone else. So the book is absolutely for me. I've never kind of tried to set myself up as the person who is living this ideal. It's kind of almost to encourage myself. So I have to say, since we've got 2 dogs, how old we've had them? 2 years, I think now. There's such an amazing connection to the seasons, because you are out, particularly I find in autumn actually, you are out every day, and you literally, and twice a day often, you see almost every leaf changing and every turn. And I do remember in the past, even though I was gardening, kind of coming out and thinking, oh, have I missed the autumn colour? You know, like I haven't really, because I've not necessarily been in parks or in, you know, now there is no chance of missing autumn. So that's been a really great way of kind of forcing me to be very,
they're such a great bridge, aren't they? Yeah. And especially if you're doing sort of similar routes where you're walking every day, then it's that connection to place, isn't it, where you do notice the small changes, because you are almost like a ritual kind of visiting those same spots and noticing every day the kind of the changes
round and round, and yes, that you know, which plant is turning, which leaves are turning first, and which, you know, you really see in all that detail, so much detail that, you know, it's the limes that go first here, and it's, you know, it's quite amazing. The oak goes last, and it's just, you know, there's no avoiding knowing it in that sort of detail. So that's been rather lovely.
If you're enjoying the Forest School podcast, we wanted to let you know about the ad-free episodes and exclusive bonus content that you can get by joining us on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/Children of the Forest today and become a Patreon, you get ad-free episodes of the regular podcast plus bonus things. Plus, when we have guests coming on, we try and get a little bit of a heads up and shout out there so that our Patreon supporters can ask us any questions that they want of those guests before the interview takes place. So head to patreon.com/Children of the Forest. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring up your so as well as the almanacs, you've got your sort of emails that you send out that are your Living Almanac series and some videos that you do. And as you said you don't kind of put yourself up there as like the expert on all of these things. And I think you very much give that down to earth vibe in your kind of communications. Like some of the video things you're going, well, I've just found this out actually, and I've just been reading about this, and I'm just sharing what I found, which is really, really lovely and really, I don't know, very sort of approachable and inclusive for people. And one of the things I really love in your email communications is, I don't know if you've got a name for it, but where you notice sort of things that are happening this week and then invite your readers to also comment on what they've noticed sort of in nature or that are particularly seasonal, and then put all those kind of comments together to end up being a bit like a poem. How did you come up with that idea, or how did that start?
It really happened by accident. So I wanted to start this kind of Substack thing, which is this weekly newsletter to send out. Really, my initial idea was just sort of like, oh, authors ought to be doing this kind of thing, keeping in contact with people that are interested in the same sorts of things. And so I came up with this idea of doing kind of 3 seasonal things that I've noticed this week, thinking I'll be out on the dog walks anyway, I'll notice them. And almost immediately, I just got these amazing comments back. People joined in and they sent through their comments. They were doing the same. I think I invited it, but I didn't really expect it. And they were just beautiful, like right from the start, just so gorgeous, the comments. And it was like, and continues to be like, a load of little kind of windows into little different kind of moments, different ways. So I've just been doing this week's and there's somebody talking about their daughter asked to wear tights instead of socks to school, and somebody else saying tea time, it's dark outside, and I've just got the candles out from the drawer, and all these tiny little kind of glimpses of other people's lives and of other people's autumns. And it just, I mean, they were there in the comments. It's a bit daft because they're there in the comments. People can just read them through, but I really enjoy sort of picking them out and turning them into these little lines. And I put it in italics and just kind of make it fancy, really. And it just turns into this lovely thing. And when I read it through, I'm just like, oh, that is this week. Yeah. It's a really nice way of kind of making this little, like you say, it's like a poem of the week, and it's entirely sort of what's the word?
Crowdsourced?
Crowdsourced, yes, without quite realising. So entirely accidental, and it's turned into this, but it'd be not unusual at all to get 50 comments, 70 comments, 100 comments sometimes. It's really like lovely, because I think, I don't know, maybe people just like seeing their little thing kind of reflected back to them, and they like seeing the whole thing made into this sort of lovely little piece of poetry. But I'm doing very little of it. I'm literally picking them out and sticking them in, and picking them out and sticking them in. And I rearrange them a bit.
That must be a very human
like
experience, though. That must be a very human experience, though, of like, if you lived in this sort of agrarian community, that sort of noticing of small changes as the seasons, that would have been the conversation. It's a bit like, English people talking about like the weather, but if you were also sharing we've got the waterproofs out this week, or we've got the candles out, that stuff that would have been conversation for a long time.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's like, you can kind of overlook that this kind of minutiae of things is the seasons changing. It is the seasons. And what's amazing every time is how different each week is to the next. And I've always kind of thought this about the months. Like, you know, I think we're very lucky here in the UK that our seasons do change rapidly, actually. You know, if you're nearer the equator or if you're nearer the north, you've got a steadier kind of thing going. Well, maybe no, not the north, but certainly nearer the equator. But here we've got this kind of midway thing that kind of means that every month is, you know, if you don't like one month, well, just hold on tight because there's another one coming in 30 days time, you know, and they just kind of turn around. And it's been really interesting to see how that actually relates week by week as well. You know, it's not changing. And yeah, how, like, you know, how quickly we're sort of tripping on into autumn, into winter, and it goes on and on. It's just, yeah, it's really lovely. And what I really love, though you say, like, I do love to see the kind of more traditional things, like you're saying, the agrarian stuff, the, you know, what are people doing outside, and also, but also I kind of really like, you know, people writing, I don't know, settling down to watch Strictly on, you know, because all of that stuff is also our seasons now.
I think,
you know.
the last one I read was talking about like seeing certain things for sale in Sainsbury's and things like that. You know, it's just like, it's real, you know, it's not just that kind of super nature connected. So where you kind of read it and go, yeah, God, I should have been outside a bit more this week, actually.
Quite.
Why haven't I picked any rose hips? Damn it. You know, it's actually more real and very grounding. And quite meditative.
Well, yes, I went to Sainsbury's and I saw that too.
Yeah,
you know, like,
exactly that.
I really like that.
Yeah, and I guess,
and like, yes, I really love that one of the of switching from socks to tights. It's like, yeah, it is that week.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I guess with that and what you're doing with the Almanac, they're both sort of marking the moment, aren't they? They're just sort of trying to slow down and go, what, and which is a very mindful thing to do, is to go, I'm not thinking so much about the future or the past right now. I'm literally noticing the tiny details, as you say, about right now, which is a really healthy, mindful thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's been really good for me to kind of to force myself to, you know, separate really to writing the Almanac. The Substack and the newsletter has kind of really made me stop and sort of see what is all this about, and it is exactly that. It is really about that kind of mindfulness and about appreciating the moment. I think it's so easy for all of us to go through the year kind of wishing for summer, wishing for Christmas. You know, you've got these kind of highlights in the year that you're sort of aiming at and holding out for. And actually, you know, we're all just living, and it's kind of, you know, we don't get enough of it. Let's enjoy every moment. If, you know, not that you can, but, you know, find little ways to at least be in the moment, whether you're enjoying it or not. It's hard to enjoy a soggy February day, but at least if you can kind of appreciate what it is and how it is a part of that whole cycle and be in it, I feel like that's just got to be a good thing, rather than just thinking, oh, you know, I don't know, 6 weeks until the weather gets better or whatever. You know? So yes, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Hey, lovely Forest School people. I know, people listening to this, you are bored of doing damper bread. You are bored of doing marshmallows. You're probably bored of doing hot chocolate. So, I wanted to let you know about the book Forest School Cooking that I've written. It is half recipes that are going to take you away from the boring marshmallows and damper bread that are driving you mad, and into like cool meals and things on sticks and fast things and slow things. And the other half of the book is all about different ovens and stoves and things that you can build to cook in different ways. I know we personally have had it where you realise that what we're doing this week, we're frying something on the frying pan. What we're going to do next week, we're going to fry something in the frying pan. So building up loads of different ovens like rocket stoves and pizza ovens, it's all in the book, and it helps you to grow your cooking from something that the kids are just waiting to get the sugar into them to something that they're actually enjoying and getting a bit more out of that cooking. So you can find your copies on Amazon of Forest School Cooking and take your cooking to the next level today. Do you ever find yourself feeling split between the email bits that are to do with sort of reflecting on the moment, and then your I don't know, do you write sort of ahead, are you writing about August in the middle of February, and does that feel weird in any way?
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah. So the funny thing about the Almanac is I imagined when I first sort of pitched it and first started it that I would be writing it as it happened. So I would be in April, I would be writing April, and it absolutely hasn't worked out like that at all. Just there is a sort of definite cycle to the year of writing it, and it doesn't work out like that. And it's another reason why the subset's been so lovely, because that just is, it can't be anything other than in the moment and it's happening. That's kind of why I called it Leah's Living Almanac. It's like we're doing it right now, seat of our pants and hold on. But no, I actually, when I'm writing the almanacs, what I've found in the end by experiment is that what works better for me, rather than sinking into 1 month and writing all of 1 month, is I sink into one section. So I will write the toughest sections first, or not toughest, but the ones that take the most thought and are going to require a little bit of poetic thinking. And so when I've got the most time ahead of me and I've got the most kind of breathing space, I do all of those bits, and I start in January and I work all the way through to December. And that is kind of hard, but I sort of obviously am trying to listen out and watch out all year round for things and make sure I'm noticing so that I can do that. And then I go back to the beginning and I do the next toughest section, which might be, and then eventually I get through to the easy bits, which is, I don't know, the moon phases and the stuff that I've already got the data for and stuff like that. So I start off actually very, very slowly. It really is like turning a wheel very slowly, and it kind of sort of creaks into gear really. And I get this. And then by the end, I can be doing like 12 pages a day because I'm just whipping through, getting the data down in the right way and stuff like that. But at the start, it's this very, very slow kind of getting going. So, but sorry, to answer your question, which I didn't really, is do I get confused? Yes, I get confused all the time because it's now 2023. I'm selling the 2024 almanac and I'm just starting working on the 2025 almanac. So I'm just like, what year is it? What month is it? I don't know. This is the problem with writing an almanac, is actually I'm like 2 years ahead when I should be in the moment.
Yeah. Well, I guess your weekly stuff, keeps pulling you back to the present a bit. Yeah. In the 2024 one, you said the theme's the garden, and for each month you've got a little kind of garden craft or activity, which struck me as being sort of particularly child friendly. So a lot of our sort of audience are forest school practitioners or parents or teachers who are working with children in nature a lot. I wondered, was that something that you like? Were you thinking of children when you were writing this one, or families? Were you thinking about things specifically, maybe to make the sort of connection with nature in the year sort of more accessible to children, or were you just thinking, oh well, I quite like to do these crafts anyhow as an adult, because they're I'm not just saying that they are just for children, but do you know what I mean? They are quite accessible if you wanted to do that with a couple of kids sort of joining in.
I think a bit of both, actually. I know that a lot of kids do enjoy it, and a lot of families enjoy it, and a lot of grandparents, I think, really enjoy reading bits of the almanac with their grandchildren, and if they've got that sort of time to do that stuff. So I kind of slightly thought of them and of thinking, what's a really nice thing to do together. But also, I was sort of hoping that adults too would enjoy making a little summer flower mandala, or preserving their leaves and things like that. So really, a bit of both, I think. I think wasn't particularly designed for children. It's not like a children's almanac, but I know that loads of kids really do enjoy it. But I think even more people enjoy it together with their kids. So that's a really lovely thing that people have told me, is that at the beginning of the month, they sit down and they read it with them, or read sections of it with them, to kind of sink into the month with them, really, and to kind of give them that kind of connection to the months, which is just such a gorgeous, gorgeous thought. You know, as an author, that's almost like the ultimate thing, the idea that people are taking it and reading it with their kids and sharing this kind of idea is just lovely. So yeah, a bit of both.
Yeah. Would you ever write a version for children? I can really imagine that really working, you know.
Yeah, we've talked about it. I don't know. I think because it is used sort of in that way already, I think probably not, but I don't know. Never say never.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Has there been anything with the themes, whenever there's like a constraint like that with people that have done various sort of iterations of a book? I'm always curious to know if there's ever been a time that they found something out afterwards. You know, like, have you ever gone, oh, if I'd known about this biscuit thing 3 years ago, oh, that would have been a great one, but biscuits is gone now, so I'm not allowed to think about biscuits anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that happens all the time. Actually, I'm trying to think of an example and I'm struggling to. But yeah, I mean, it's always, I think, going to be kind of an imperfect thing. And it's funny because at the moment, like I say, I'm starting to work on 2025, and what I'm trying to do is all of that kind of research and those kind of connections, give myself lots of time so that I do find those things, and so I don't kind of get surprised and go, that was what I was sort of trying to get at, and that's the perfect thing. And just sort of making sure that all of that stuff kind of weaves in together and works, and that I find all the right things. But absolutely. But hey, there's always another year, and
Biscuits round two.
Like you say, perhaps you can't do biscuits immediately after biscuit of the year, but I could probably sneak one in at a later date. So this is the absolute beauty of having an annual publication, is all that stuff that I kind of miss out or forget about. There will be a chance that I can include it later on, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hey, podcast listeners, if you are enjoying the show, there's a small but very powerful thing you can do to support us, and it's completely free. If you can take a moment to rate, review, and share the podcast, it means the world to us in terms of sharing all the wonky goodness that we're getting up to with more and more people. Thank you so much to everybody that's already left reviews. We do read them and try and reply to people if we can. Sharing it and getting the word out to more people really helps what we're doing. Thank you all so much. What does that, you mentioned then about the sort of you're starting the research bit for 2025. What does, obviously without giving out loads of all your secrets, but like, what does that look like in terms of, because some of the stuff in these books it feels like very folk word of mouth type knowledge. And so and I'm just curious about that kind of, you know, how do you link up with those people? How do you find them, or do they find you?
Anyone in particular? Do you?
I just think in terms of like, because a lot of forest schools in the UK are linked to that kind of history of the land and those very like specific things that come with place, but some people can really struggle to access those things, to find them, I suppose, if they're not already linked with a community that's been there a long time, or with all those things. So when it's like the folk stories that are in here, or the different things that come up, I'm always kind of curious about how you collect those things.
Yes, I don't know. I've got quite a good decent library now of sort of folk stories and folk songs and things like that. With the so I suppose it's kind of finding little things, little keys, little keywords, I suppose, that I can use to link things together. With the folk songs in particular, that I do in conjunction with a guy called Richard Barnard, who's a Bristol composer, and I sort of throw really, well, last year was the first time we quite did it like this. We've done it slightly different ways each time, but last year I kind of threw the idea at him really and said, look, the theme is the garden. Can you find me, you know, a folk song that relates to January that's about the garden? for January, and do the same and do the same, all the way through. And then, and he came back with some, and then I came with a few ideas. So between us, so he obviously had those kind of links and those contacts, I think, and obviously that, the education in it to find that out. So that's really good. So that's partly it, is that slowly over the years I've started to bring in a few more people and ask around, and then just books and dare I say it, a bit of Googling and and all of that. And that's I also, you mentioned the meditations woman this year. She's actually somebody who I know, who I met. I go to a women's circle that she runs every month. And I just thought immediately, as she has a yurt on her land, this really beautiful land, and she has her own yurt, and she runs these monthly women's circles, and she would sit there and talk to us about the months and about the moon energies and all of that stuff. And I don't know anything about all that stuff. I haven't really... I'm not even entirely sure if I'm a believer or any of that stuff, but I thought it was such a lovely other way into the year, and kind of almost like, say, a meditation, and just a way of kind of stopping and focusing on the year. So I asked her if she would write something for us, and I think it's just so lovely what she has written. Again, it's a little bit woo and all of that, which generally I've sort of slightly avoided, but I think maybe there's a bit of space for that too.
Just a sprinkling of woo is always nice, I find.
Just a sprinkling.
Exactly. That is a bit, actually, when we were showing our volunteer today, that she kind of opened it and was looking at the bits in that section, which was your table this month may have, a bit of lichen or some bare twigs, and she was like, oh, that's such a great idea, which is sort of like a kind of mindful nature table idea, I guess.
I do love it. I'm sure you are very au fait with nature tables yourselves.
Basically,
I do love a nature
loads
table.
of random crap on all the surfaces of my house, rather than a beautifully curated nature table. Sort of like with my family going, why are there conkers everywhere? Rather than just one perfect conker on a beautiful wooden table. It's a bit the other way around.
My household does nature pockets, which is any clothing, jacket things. You could just empty it. There's acorns, twigs, whatever. It's very wholesome and woo.
Beautiful.
Oh, amazing.
Lovely.
Sorry, I'm trying to think through. I did have a thing on this one. With the recipes that are in these ones, because recipes have been a theme throughout all of them. And I was wondering about, again, I suppose it links back to that thing of doing things out of season. Presumably these recipes all at some point get tested. Do they all get tested? And I suppose, does it feel weird having a roast in the middle of July?
They do all get tested. To be honest, I have somebody who helps me with that, so I sort of come up with the general idea for it, and then Beth Rickaby, she develops them, and then we talk about them and taste them and all of that, and then so she does lots. And when we did the bun of the month, she said, I think you've given me gluten intolerance, because she was having to test and eat these buns over and over again. So I slightly ship that out to somebody else to do the very out of season thing. But yes, I mean, that's just a part of the job. Unfortunately, yes, if we had endless time, we would be eating the correct bun at the correct time of year, but it doesn't quite work out like that. Only really gets tricky when you get the very, very seasonal ingredients. So your wild garlic or your gooseberries and things like that. That's where you really do need to be testing those things in season, because there just is nothing really else like it. Those have to be done right.
I've just looking through the 2019 one to go, what's in October for that year, and happened upon the recipe for soul cakes, and then followed by the soul cakes song for Halloween, and I did use this actually in I hadn't heard that song until I saw it in the book and sort of played it on the piano and went, actually. And since then I've heard it quite a few times, when you've heard something or seen something and then you notice it everywhere. And we did use it at Forest School, and we sang the song, and when we made a sort of vegan version of soul cakes. And
that's lovely.
so I definitely recommend these, if you're listening and you're a Forest School leader or anyone who's working with children through the seasons, then I think these are an absolute sort of must have, really, to kind of dip in and as the inspiration for activities and ways to mark the year. So yeah, thank you so much for talking to us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Before we go, is there anywhere else that people can find your work? So obviously there is the Almanac that you can buy, and you are part of another podcast as well, I know. I can find that. What's that called?
Podcast is called As the Season Turns, and it's quite short. It's about 30 minutes long, and it's really it comes out on the 1st of every month, and it's kind of intended as a kind of, again, another sort of sinking into the month. Here we go, let's get ready for this. I do it in collaboration with Fern, who are a perfume maker, organic perfume maker, and we just sort of put together. It's not just me. There's little bits from the Almanac, little original bits, and then there's other people that contribute bits as well, and it's all just similar kind of stuff. But there's some folk songs in there, and there's a recorded sound every month from nature, and a little herbarium thing. And at the moment we're doing Island of the Month, so we're going around and looking at a different island that's got a story that relates to the month each month. So all of that. So yes, there is the podcast, and you can get that in anywhere that you find podcasts. What else? I think that's it. I do, yes, the Almanacs, the Substack, which is Leah's Living Almanac, which is a free weekly newsletter that we were talking about, and the podcast.
Amazing,
fabulous. And the 2024 Almanac is available to buy now, isn't it? Even though, I mean, Christmas is coming quite rapidly closer, but it does seem weird to be already thinking about 2024. But yes, now is the time.
But you need to get it now. You need to pre-order it so that you're ready for January. You don't want to get it at Christmas.
Yes, it's true. You
ahead of time.
Yes, unfortunately, I think it's true. Yes, you need to get someone to buy it for you and then wrap it up and put it away somewhere so you don't read it all. You need to be very strict with yourself and stick it in a cupboard when it arrives.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Leah.
Lovely.
Lovely
it's
to
been
speak
really
with
lovely.
you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And we wanted to let you know that we want to hear from you, the Forest School community. If you've got questions, topics you'd like to explore, books you want us to review, share your ideas and thoughts with us by emailing childrenoftheforest@outlook.com. Your input is what fuels our episodes, and we can't wait to connect with you.